I do have one. It is RS 0468, a bill regarding participation in school activities. Is there any objection to the introduction of this bill? Seeing none, that bill is introduced. Today, committee, we have a hearing on Senate Bill 75. We do have a full schedule of conferees, so I want to give some instructions to hopefully make this process go as smoothly as possible and get as many voices in as we can. If we missed anybody, I want to apologize up front. We had hundreds of testimonies submitted. Staff did their very best to go through those and separate oral from written to the best of their ability. And so if you were inadvertently left off or did not get your testimony in by the deadline, I apologize, but we will proceed with the best that we could do with our time frame. So conferees, please do not read your testimony. We have your written testimony. Please highlight what it is you want us to know. Every conferee will have 2 minutes to speak. We will cut you off when your 2 minutes is up. Try to keep repetitive comments to a minimum. If you're hearing every other proponent or opponent say the same thing, when possible, I know it's hard when you get up here, you're nervous, you have prepared remarks. Try to keep repetitive comments to a minimum. Committee oral testimony is uploaded. All of the written is not uploaded yet due to the volume. It will be as soon as possible. We're working hard on that, so I encourage you to make sure you go through that written testimony. We do have a hard stop at 2:25. We are on the floor on GO, so we are going to have a hard stop at 2:25. And for the audience, there are no signs, no outbursts, so please maintain decorum during the hearing. And with that, we will begin with a bill brief by our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. You should have access to a memorandum from the revisor's office that goes into the details of this bill. Senate Bill 75 would establish the Education Opportunity Tax Credit for taxpayers with eligible dependent children who are not enrolled in public school. Section 1, starting on page 1, provides the details of the tax credit. I will quickly go through the highlights of those details. The Education Opportunity Tax Credit would be $8,000 for each dependent child who is enrolled full-time in an accredited private school and not enrolled in a public school during the tax year. The tax credit.
I think I'm going to stop you there for a second. I did say we could allow the door to be open as long as there's not too much noise, but I do hear it's very difficult to hear. So I am going to ask for the doors to go ahead and be closed so that the committee we can hear in here. Sir, thank you. We got to hear. I apologize for interrupting, but it's too much background noise. We can't hear well in here, so sorry to interrupt. Please proceed.
So just quickly, the tax credit would be an amount of $8,000 for each dependent child who is enrolled full-time in an accredited private school and not enrolled in public school during the tax year. And that tax credit would be $4,000 for each dependent child who is enrolled full-time in a non-accredited private school and not enrolled in public school during the tax year. In order to receive the tax credit for their dependent children, the taxpayer would have to provide the child's social security number. A taxpayer whose dependent child has received a scholarship under the tax credit for low-income student scholarship program would not be eligible to receive the Education Opportunity Tax Credit. Additionally, the bill would allow the Department of Revenue to consult with the Department of Education for the purposes of verifying whether or not a dependent child had been enrolled in public school during the tax year. Subsection B of the bill states that the amount of the maximum amount of tax credits allowed under the bill would be $125 million per tax year. And if that maximum amount reaches 90%, or I'm sorry, if the amount of tax credit claimed reaches 90% of that $125 million maximum, the maximum would then increase by 25%. If the cap is reached, priority would be given to taxpayers who have received this tax credit previously. The bill states that this is a refundable tax credit. Subsection I of the bill provides that fraudulent claims for the tax credit would be subject to penalty. The bill would require the Department of Revenue to submit a report to the legislature on the tax credit each year. And then I will note that Section 2 of the bill is rather long, but it just provides a conforming amendment on page 14 to the Income Tax Act, stating that any refund received by a taxpayer would not be considered part of that taxpayer's income for state tax purposes. Senate Bill 75 would take effect on July 1, 2025, upon publication in the statute book. And I will note that if this bill sounds familiar, over the last 2 years, there have been similar versions of this that have been introduced into the Senate. And with that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Committee, questions for the reviser. Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tamara, on page 2 of the bill under, in line 35, when you talk about any person who intentionally files a false claim, I had a question about how we know if they do.
Tamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. That would be determined by the Department of Revenue.
But, okay, but there's no mechanism in this bill for the Department of Revenue. There is the issue, the one thing about that the Department of Revenue has to check to see if they're enrolled in a public school, but other than that, is there any other mechanism?
The bill does not specifically speak to that. I am presuming that the Department of Revenue has processes in place to deal with fraudulent tax claims that are filed.
It would be the same process, I believe, as they do for any other fraudulent tax claim. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions, just to clarify the difference between a tax credit and a tax deduction, and then refundable versus non-refundable. And then I have a another question.
So I'm not a tax revisor, so if my answer is a little wonky, I can follow up and make sure to get something a little bit more formal for you. So this is a tax credit. So I believe that, as speaking to the refundable part, so if the person's income tax liability was less than the amount of the credit, they would receive that difference back.
Okay, so I'm saying this is like crediting, like I am paying a check or getting refund back. Okay, and my other question, as I am reading the qualifications for the private school, does it have to be a school in Kansas?
So the only requirements listed in the bill for an accredited private school are they are either accredited by the State Board of Education or a national or regional accrediting agency that is recognized by the state board. I have not reviewed what accrediting agencies have been approved by the state board, so I do not know if there are any schools outside the state that would meet that criteria.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there any provision for, say, a partial year? The student, say, starts in school having issues in October, becomes homeschooled.
So my understanding of the bill is if they are enrolled any time during the tax year in a public school, they would not qualify for that tax year for the credit.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we will move to proponent testimony. Committee, we will try to take a few minutes after all proponent testimony for questions, same with opponent. We will begin with Emily Aragon, student, Maranatha Christian Academy. Blanket apologies if I mispronounce names. Emily, are you here? Okay, we'll move on, and then when she gets here, we will take her testimony. Melinda Evans, Special Education Coordinator, Maranatha, welcome to committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Erickson and members of the committee. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm a proponent in support of Senate Bill 75 on behalf of Maranatha Christian Academy. My name is Melinda Evans. I hold a specialist certificate in leadership in special and inclusive education from the University of Kansas. I also hold a master's of arts in education. I have 2 decades of experience in public school, private school, and private Christian school. So I see this through a lot of different lenses. I am the special education coordinator at Maranatha Christian Academy, and I want to tell you about the positive benefit of honoring parental choice for children who have learning disabilities. So in IDEA, the law that provides protections, there is for children who have disabilities, and it was written in 1975, reauthorized in 1997. There is this foundational principle called least restrictive environment. And what that means is that you want the child to be educated alongside their peers and be able to receive the maximum benefit of education. The parents themselves are key members of the individual educational plan and part of this process. And I am pleased to tell you that Maranatha Christian Academy educates students who have disabilities alongside their peers in not just academics, but we have sports and arts and theater and amazing opportunities for students. So I want to highlight a student who came to us from a public school. He had been in public school for many years and he had a significant IEP, and now he has a plan in our school, in our private school. His plan involves a visit from a social worker. So he had been in public school, he came to us. There's a rating scale from 0 to 20. He hovered around a 4 for years in the public school. He came to our school, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna support this child? And we got a plan together and started supporting him.
Aragon, I am so sorry your
am I out
time
of time?
is up. We do have your written testimony.
Okay.
Committee, please take a look
Thank
for
you.
the remainder of that testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jamie Finkeldye, Associate Superintendent of the Catholic Diocese of Wichita. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Happy to speak as a proponent of Senate Bill 75 today. I am the Associate Superintendent of the Diocese of Wichita, and we encompass the southwestern quarter of the state. We have 38 schools, almost 9,000 students, and because of our unique stewardship model, we serve over 2,000 kids on free and reduced lunch, about 27% of our schools. So we support this legislation because it provides parents with an opportunity to choose the educational environment that best fits their child's unique needs. All parents, regardless, should be able to choose the opportunity that is best for them, whether that's public, private, or some other choice. Our schools have a proven track record of serving low-income families effectively. When we compare our state assessment data, because all of our schools are state accredited, we take the state assessment, we can compare our high-risk kids to public school kids, high-risk kids, and we outperform them on average. So don't get me wrong, public schools are great, and they play an essential role in our communities, but private schools are great as well. And parents should have the freedom to choose schools based on such factors as location, class size, opportunity, things like that. We do like the implementation of the Oklahoma bill. This is similar to an Oklahoma bill that's really demonstrated the ability to benefit even a larger population of children. We think this provides a really valuable precedent for Kansas to follow. But we just really want to support this bill and hope that you give educational opportunity a chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for keeping it brief. We have next James Franco, President of Kansas Policy Institute. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to say at the outset, everybody in this room cares about Kansas kids, their own kids, the other kids moving through our schools, whether they be public, private, home, whatever. We have already heard compelling testimony, and we're going to hear compelling testimony from a variety of proponents and a variety of opponents of this bill as well. And I want to tell you a brief story about my experience because it elucidates a broader point. My family moved from Kansas City, Missouri to southern Johnson County to attend Blue Valley schools in the 1970s because they felt that was the right educational fit for my brothers and I. But unfortunately, not every family can afford to make that choice. Not every family can afford to live in the district that they want to. Not every family can afford private school tuition. And the bill before you today puts that option in the hands of more people. And I only tell you that to say something that we all kind of intuitively know, but something that this bill puts in reach, is that we have school choice in Kansas for the families that can afford it. And everybody else is left to wherever they happen to live based on their zip code. And that is not to say that our public schools don't do wonderful work and that we don't have dedicated teachers and administrators serving those kids. But we have school choice in Kansas for the families that can afford it, and this bill aims to help remedy that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I wanted to check, is Emily here yet? Emily? Okay, Emily Aragon, student from Maranatha Christian Academy. You have 2 minutes. Welcome to committee.
Chair Erickson and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony in support of Senate Bill 75 on behalf of Maranatha Christian Academy. My name is Emily Aragon, and I'm a 15-year-old student at Maranatha Christian Academy. I began to attend Maranatha when I was in 4th grade. Prior to attending Maranatha, I had been homeschooled my whole life. I was blessed with the opportunity to pick a school that was the best fit for my needs and aspirations. I know that many students in Kansas do not get this option because they cannot afford it. The switch from homeschooling to private school was scary and difficult, but Maranatha's loving, welcoming, and nurturing staff made it all worth it, and I believe that every student deserves that school experience. I owe it to my hardworking parents that sacrificed so much to give me and my sister the best life possible, and Maranatha's staff for shaping me with unconditional support and guidance, teaching me the value of perseverance and reminding me that no dream or goal is too big when it is fueled by dedication and passion. I ask for your help and support to make education opportunity expansion accessible for all Kansans. I passionately believe that all Kansans should have access to an education that not only prepares them for their future, but also empowers them to make a positive, lasting impact on our society. Private or public, every student should get a choice in their education. As our nation's future, we must ensure that every student, regardless of their family's financial status, has access to the school best fit for them. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate you being here. Next, we have Dr. Kimberly Gill, Superintendent of Maranatha Christian Academy. Welcome, Dr. Gill.
Senator Erickson, what an honor to be in front of all of you today. I want to apologize on behalf of the Christian school movement that we have not had a loud voice here in the state of Kansas in support of our children, but I want you to know that's changed. We were 1,000 people strong at our rally today. My role in Christian education started in 1989 at Maranatha. I started there right out of college, taught for 7 years. The Lord moved me around and has brought me back as superintendent now. I also serve as a central accreditation commissioner for the Association of Christian Schools International, which is several states across the country. I'm also on the National Advisory Board for Policy and Advocacy for them. I've also been on CAPE in Colorado and the Great Plains Alliance of Christian School Board. I can tell you, after 30 plus years in Christian education, I would never sacrifice in any other way than for these students. My retirement account can attest to the fact that even though the pay scale is significantly less, the test scores are significantly higher. I did a little study before I came here about all the tax credits that our state is giving, things for swine facilities, things for historical structures. Why aren't we supporting our students? Why aren't we supporting our students with those same things? If you can give parents the power to make decisions over their own children, you will be touching the future of the state. I would be a bad superintendent, not a good steward of my parents, if I did not tell them, hop the state line, go to Missouri, where we got the law passed, so that if you're in the military and a Kansas resident, you can get a scholarship for your child. If you have special needs, you can get a scholarship for your child. The ratios in my local school district for the students in special ed is 1 to 61. 1 to 61 students. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Gill. Next, we have Bart Koyman, a U.S. citizen, Kansas resident, and small business owner. Welcome to committee.
Thank you very much. My name is Bart Koyman. I'm a proponent for SB 75. I think it's a wonderful bill. About 40 years ago, there was this boy that started kindergarten and didn't always behave. And his teacher would grab his ears, and that boy still thinks to this day that his ears are deformed because of his teacher. It happens to be that boy was me. I wasn't always I was sometimes naughty. Happens to be that teacher was my mother. Fast forward, 15 years old, mom took my younger daughter and me, moved us to Arizona, to the big city. We grew up in a small town in Wisconsin called Baldwin. Moved to Arizona, got enrolled in school, and I remember the guidance counselor saying, hey, you're never gonna see your football teammates throughout the day. And for me, that blew my mind. I mean, I panicked. And if it wasn't for my grandparents footing the bill for the tuition to go to Valley Christian School, I don't know what would have happened. Why do I tell you this story? Is that we get into this whole thing of choice, and I got a choice. I had a choice because my grandparents had the capacity to do that. And all we're saying, I think, is to give families the choice. Give parents to make the choice that's best for their family. I don't think the government is the best. The government is the best institution to make that choice. For those of you that believe in this bill, that believe in school choice, thank you. For those of you that are opposed to it, I just ask and pray that your heart changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have James Randall Miller, home educator from Miller Academy. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Chair Erickson, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today as a proponent for Senate Bill 75. I live in DeSoto, Kansas. My wife and I have 7 children, and we have homeschooled continuously for the past 30 years. We are currently homeschooling our 9-year-old twin daughters and our 5-year-old son that we adopted in 2021 from the Kansas foster care system. Homeschooling has been great for our family due to some unique health challenges and learning disabilities that our children have encountered. Homeschool families currently pay for all their curriculum and resources, and in addition, subsidize the public education system at the same level of families that send their children to public schools. The proposed tax credits with this bill provide some much-needed tax relief and would return a portion of the money that we pay through state income taxes, state and local sales taxes, and property taxes back to hardworking families to help offset some of the costs that we incur for our curriculum and so forth. Our family last year paid over $9,000 in property taxes alone, in addition to state income taxes, sales taxes, and so forth. So, in summary, I would say that other states have been successful in providing much-needed tax relief to homeschool and private school families without adding undue restrictions to homeschool and private school freedoms. I think we can do this in Kansas as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Committee, next we have Samuel Milner, student, Maranatha Christian Academy. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair Erickson and members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony in support of Senate Bill 75 on behalf of Maranatha. So I am a 15-year-old student. I've attended a Maranatha Christian Academy since 4th grade. So following the passing of my father, when I was 9 years old, my mother sought to send me to the school that would best fit my emotional and educational needs. And Maranatha has very well done that. With smaller class sizes, I've been able to be poured into by teachers, and the student-teacher relationships are much better. And the teachers at Maranatha are great. They have given us opportunities to learn in ways that I did not know I could. And so a lot of people think that only the affluent families can enroll their kids in private schools. Maranatha has provided over $400,000 in financial relief this year to help give more students the opportunity to come and learn in a school that would best support their needs. And many other schools, private schools across the state, have undertaken similar efforts. I come to you guys today to ask for your support for Senate Bill 75.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Next, we have Dr. John Walker, Superintendent, Central Christian School in Hutchinson, Kansas. Welcome to committee.
Thank you so much for having me, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Education Committee. You've got my testimony in front of you this afternoon, so I'd encourage you to read that. My name is John Walker. I serve as the superintendent of Central Christian School in Hutchinson, Kansas. I serve as the state director for Association of Christian Schools International and also serve as a board member of the Kansas Association of Christian Schools, Kansas Association of Independent and Religious Schools here in Kansas. And I respectfully ask for your support for Senate Bill 75 as a member of those organizations. I want to establish just this afternoon and speak to a couple of points. First off is that it is a fundamental belief of mine that parents have the sovereign rights over their children. I think each parent has the sovereign rights over their children. Until that child is of adult age, those parents have the sovereign rights over their kids, and they uniquely know the needs of their child and how their child can best be served and what environment can best be served. You know, I don't think that when we look back in 20 to 30 years, those who are proponents of school choice will be on the right side of history. Kansas one day will have school choice, and it's my hope and my prayer that we will not be number 50. It is my hope and my prayer that we will stand up for what's right, that we will recognize the sovereign rights of our parents, that we will move this bill forward in a direction that's helpful to our parents, and to give educational freedom to all parents of the state of Kansas. Lastly, I want to speak to the issue of accountability. Many of these private schools in the state of Kansas are accredited through national recognized accrediting bodies. My school is through the Association of Christian Schools International. In my testimony, you will find a link that you can follow, and you can look through all of our accreditation standards. We have accreditation standards that we have to meet. We go through standardized testing with our students. We do lots of things that the public school does. We teach from a different worldview, and that's what parents want to sign up for. That's what parents want for their school. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Committee, on your list, a couple of corrections. Elizabeth Patton listed under opponents. She has written only proponent testimony. And Dr. Lorenzo Rizzi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is a proponent. And are you here, Dr. Rizzi? Okay, that may be written only as well. Please, someone correct me if that's not right. I believe, committee, that concludes our proponent testimony. I am watching the clock, so I really want to give the opponents time for us to hear their testimony, so we will save questions for whatever time is remaining at the very end until we have to all be on the floor. So with that, we're going to move to opponent testimony. We will begin with Representative Mary Lynn Poskin. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. You know, we are charged with considering our ending balances from 2029 after the much-needed tax cuts in 2024, being efficient. In fact, there is a committee on efficiency, which Senator Erickson is chairing, and we need to look at policies through those lenses. In House K-12 budget last week, we did not fund $41,738 for School for the Blind for summer programming in Dodge City. If you look at Senate Bill 75, there are many families, particularly with multiple students, who will have a tax credit that's larger than their actual tuition. So I pulled up the Sacred Heart Cathedral in Dodge City, and a family of 6 would end up with a profit of $43,527 under this tax bill, and that would be enough to fund the blind students that we said no to in House Committee K-12. And I'd like to mention what it would do for Vice Chair Thomas's district. I'm not picking on you, but the schools in my district are no longer publishing their tuition. but you can see in my testimony that I've got the fiscal report from Prince of Peace and their tuition. They collected $2.5 million in tuition last year, $2.5 million from the offertory plate, which they say $1 million is to subsidize their school. Under Senate Bill 75, Prince of Peace Catholic school families would receive more from state general funds than the $2.5 million paid in tuition in the 23-24 school year. A family of 3 could profit $13,750. A family of 5 could profit $29,750 for sending their children to private school. That would also then replace the $1 million in offertory funds as well. So what I'd like the committee to consider is that vouchers are wrong for Kansas in any form. Voters say no to them every single time they're on the ballot, in every form that they're in. Perhaps there's room on this tax credit for private schools to raise their tuition, which a school in Dubuque, Iowa did 58% when vouchers went through. We're shorting our special ed funding by more than the cap. We have IDD wait lists that are thousands
I'm so sorry
long.
that is your time, but thank you for providing testimony today.
Appreciate it.
Next committee, we have Leah Fleiter, Assistant Executive Director of Advocacy for the Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for running a very good hearing. So I'm Leah Fleiter with the Kansas Association of School Boards. We represent 2,000 locally elected boards of education across the state of Kansas. We have been in existence since 1917, and I myself served 8 years on the Manhattan-Ogden USD 383 Board of Education. You have my testimony, so I'm just going to hit some high points here on why KASB is so passionate about Kansas public schools and how that leads to our opposition to the bill today. Public schools are the lifeblood of our Kansas communities, from the smallest towns like Hartford and Opie to urban areas like Wichita, Wyandotte County, and Olathe. Friday night lights, homecoming parades, and school plays and band concerts bring us all together. Mr. Willis told the committee just a few days ago that public school graduation rates are at a record high high school graduation rates. State assessment scores are on the rise. And Kansas high schoolers earned 6,200 professional credentials just last year, and that's a 150% increase since 2009. We're proud that our public schools prepare kids to thrive in work and in life, and when Kansas public schools thrive, our communities thrive as well, and as does our state. Vouchers, unfortunately, have the opposite effect. Kansas is strongest when every kid has the freedom to learn and grow in their local public school. Please join us in supporting Kansas public schools and rejecting Senate Bill 75. I would like to also say that Ms. Evans and I have now bonded over our shared commitment to fully funding special education, and I gave her one of our buttons. So I'm glad that we were together today. So thank you.
Thank you. I do see Lynn Rogers in the audience today. I had you down on WebEx. Were you you're obviously here. Would you like to, unless you want to step out and we can make you come in virtually.
That's right. I could do that.
So welcome to committee.
Thank you. I believe I testified last year by WebEx because I drove up and they didn't get it done. So, but it is a privilege to be here and all the senators. I am representing KIFA, the Kansas Interfaith Action Group. We are a multi-faith, multi-issue advocacy group, and we are in opposition of Senate Bill 75 for various reasons. One, we feel it will devastate rural communities. As a banker in the rural community for 35 plus years, when you lose a school and a loss of 5 to 10 students could very easily lose a school. You lose a school, you lose a post office, you lose a co-op, you lose the entire community. I've seen it happen many times. Secondly, this bill, we talk about it for low income, but it doesn't just affect low income. We're talking about this for all incomes. There's no means test. Family with two students could make up to almost $300,000 and not pay any state tax. Third, the cost starts at $125 million, but it ponies up every $25 million. That 125 will serve about 15,000 people at $8,000 a year. That will be used up very quickly. There's approximately 45,000 students, according to research in private schools, 15,000 in home schools. You could very easily be up to $225 million within 4 years. So that's going to blow a real hole in your budget. And then finally, accountability. There's no public accountability on these funds. There's no public input. I don't know of any other state program that has this type of cost without that type of accountability. So appreciate your time today. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer anytime during the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I believe our next conferees are going to be on WebEx. Laura Birchfield, Advocacy Director, Mainstream Civic Engagement. Oh, she's here. Okay, good. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, and apologies for that confusion. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much for allowing me to come and represent Mainstream Coalition in our opposition to Senate Bill 75. My name is Laurel Birchfield. I'm the Advocacy Director, and I am a resident of Shawnee, Kansas. I'm going to be focusing my testimony on our opposition based in separation, as this is a separation of church and state violation, and leave the impact that this diversion of public dollars from public goods will have to those who represent our public schools. Mainstream Coalition was founded over 30 years ago by faith leaders who warned about the encroachment of narrow extremist religious views into our public institutions, including public schools. Today, we continue to advocate to make sure that our religious institutions are protected from the overreach of government, and that government is protected from the overreach of extreme religious views. Today, the State House is full of students advocating for school choice, and I want to make clear that my testimony today does not intend to imply that, or to speak poorly of their choice to attend private religious schools. Our opposition to Senate Bill 75 is because it uses public dollars and resources to fund religious teachings, and this is bad for our schools and for our students who do not fit into specific religious worldviews. Because these tax credits would come out of the state general fund, this means that my taxes are being used and diverted away from public goods that I support, and instead is being used to fund religious teachings. This bill essentially is making me now donate or tithe to churches to which I do not belong. It also promotes a very specific view of the world that can be based in narrow, extremist religious teachings that don't represent the beliefs of many people of faith. 3 of the most popular U.S. textbooks and curriculum used by Christian schools and homeschools have been shamed publicly for the way that they teach history and science. At one point, an accelerated Christian education, or ACE textbook, taught that the Loch Ness Monster is real and a modern-day dinosaur as proof of creationism. These textbooks have taught that slavery was black immigration, and that...
I'm sorry that your time is up, but we do have your written testimony, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Committee, next we have Judith Deedy on behalf of Game On for Kansas Schools. Is she here or on WebEx? Is she on WebEx? Okay, can you hear us?
Yes, and I think I got myself unmuted.
Okay,
you
welcome.
Yes,
you have 2 minutes.
Chair Erickson, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We oppose Senate Bill 75 because it ignores the function of public education funding and essentially pays people to put their children in private schools or homeschool without regard to ability to pay, amount paid in taxes, or education expenditures. People may choose not to send their children to public schools, but they are not entitled to cash for doing so. Just as we don't allow credits for people who use country clubs instead of parks and libraries instead of bookstores, parents who choose private or homeschooling are not relieved from sharing in the responsibility of funding public education, and they are not entitled to what amounts to a cash payment using other people's tax dollars for opting out. Under this bill, a taxpayer can receive much more in credit than they pay in taxes, and they receive the additional funds in a payment from the state. Our state can't afford to fund public schools, including special education and private and home schools. This bill would decrease the state general fund and would constitute a new expenditure because it would likely be used by every current private and homeschool student. This is especially troubling at a time when the state is generally looking at budget cuts. There is also no income limit in SB 75, so people who are perfectly capable of paying for their children's private education and are already doing so would get a handout from the state, no strings attached. This is an improper diversion of state funding. There is also no link between this bill and actual expenditures on education expenditures, and no oversight to ensure that the money is being spent on legitimate education expenses. When parents spend their own money, the state has less of an interest in ensuring they make good choices. As we have seen in Arizona, Florida, and other states, allowing parents to spend funds without sufficient rules and oversight results in wasteful and fraudulent expenditures. As Kansans, we object to our fellow citizens using state tax dollars, including dollars we have contributed,
Miss Didi,
on scams or luxury items. Yes.
Miss Didi, that is your time. I appreciate your testimony. Committee, next we have Amy Hill, Blue Valley District parent. Is Amy online? Or Amy, can you hear us?
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Chairman and members of the committee for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is Amy Hill. I am a parent in the Blue Valley School District. I have 3 children in that school district, a senior, a sophomore, and a 7th grader. And I want to share my perspective and respectfully voice my concerns about Senate Bill 75. I know we're all here because we share the same goal of ensuring our children have access to opportunities that help them learn and become productive adults. And that's what I've seen firsthand in our public schools with my children. And it's what it makes me want to advocate for ensuring public schools are well funded because they benefit the majority of Kansas kids and our communities. I want to highlight my family's personal experience with public schools in the Blue Valley School District. Each of my children learns very differently and they take their own approach as a student. And over the years, I've watched their teachers work very hard to find ways to support them individually. My senior just completed a semester in the Blue Valley CAPS, our Center for Advanced Professionals program, where he gained some real life experience to help him choose what he might want to study in college. My sophomore has had several math teachers who've helped her build her confidence and have shown her she's very capable of figuring things out on her own. And my 7th grader absolutely loves the gifted program, which a second grade teacher thoughtfully recommended for him after recognizing he needed the extra challenge. We have incredible teachers here in Kansas, and if you spend just a few minutes talking to your teachers or spending time in their classrooms, you'll be so impressed by the critical thinking, the collaboration, and the hands-on learning that's going on. They deserve our support in real and tangible actions, and I worry that this bill would put that kind of support at risk. Teachers in public schools and the schools themselves are already expected to do so much with limited resources, and rather than risking the funds available to them, I urge you to consider initiatives that will strengthen our public schools and protect our public education system because so many Kansas families rely on this system. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have Hillary Junk, Kansas resident. Are you here or online? Hillary, welcome to committee.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair and the committee members. Yes, my name is Hillary Junk. I live in Lenexa, Kansas, and I'm a proud graduate of the Olathe Public Schools. Here to voice my opposition around 2 things. 1, fiscal policy and fiduciary duty. With my 15 plus years in investment management, I know a bit about those 2 things. My concerns. Why is the state, through tax credits, assuming expenditures that were previously covered by private sector spending? I hope that we can first fund the public goods before we fund private goods. I'm concerned, why is the renewal automatic and increasing when there is no data provided? With many of the other policy bills and things, we require the data and reflection before approving. How will we know if the program is successful without this data and accountability? Again, we need to trust but verify. I worry that we're incentivizing families to turn a private sector expense into a source of income, especially without any oversight. Basically, it comes down to, while I'm a Kansas resident and public school graduate, I don't have children of my own, but I care deeply about an educated community. But if I were to choose not to engage with a public service, does not mean that I'm therefore entitled to the monies that support those public goods. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking time to testify. Next, we have Sarah McKay, parent. Are you online, Sarah? Is Sarah with us? Okay.
Here.
Just a second.
We can barely hear you.
Okay, you can hear me though?
We can hear you if you speak clearly. Welcome to committee.
So sorry about the audio. I am Sarah McKay. I'm a proud parent of 2 children. My daughter, I'm also a proud graduate of Catholic schools, and yet I'm in opposition to this bill. My daughter also graduated from a private Catholic school here in Kansas City. And that was a personal choice that we made that is completely separate from what we're talking about today, because that was our choice to send her. My son is what we're talking about today specifically, and I want to go into the idea of what it's like to be a parent who needs all these programs. My son at age 1 started having seizures. He's now in 8th grade. He's had 2 brain surgeries, and one of them left him with a frontal lobe issue where he has poor emotional control, has an actual neurological response. We did not have a social worker in our elementary school due to budget cuts, and then the Gannon funding money coming in along with COVID funding gave us a full-time social worker in 5th grade. It made an absolute difference, not just in his life, but also in the lives of the children around him learning. And so that was the beginning. After the last from 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we are just now seeing the absolute reward that happens when you invest in special education funding. He's been in special ed since 5th grade. He has an IEP. But we are seeing what happens when last year everything was hard, new change, new school, middle school, and the school worked with him. The school had social workers, the school had support, which means that this year he went into school with all of these tools, and now he's successful, and now he can go to school. We've also seen that if you take away any one of the supports that he does have in school, and so many other kids need that are just like him, everything falls apart. One thing was wrong last week, and they pulled away the para for him for the day, and we had major breakdowns for the first time all year. I'm concerned that the idea of putting public funds to private schools is going to take down the money that is meant for all.
Sarah, thank you so much. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Committee, next we have Mary Sinclair, Kansas PTA Advocacy Team. Mary, are you online?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Thank you and to committee members for the opportunity to provide testimony. I'm also a proud alumni of the Kansas Public Schools, as are my children. The Kansas PTA is opposed to this bill and the use of public funds to subsidize the private non-public school system. Our public schools are the heart of Kansas communities, serving 90% of school-age youth. Our teachers and administrators are committed to preparing all kids to thrive in work and in life, creating communities for every child to achieve and to be successful serves to strengthen the viability of a thriving Kansas future. This tax credit voucher bill is a brand new entitlement program to subsidize our private schools, estimated to trigger $125 million in new K-12 education funding just within the first year. And this is at a time when our state has yet to fully fund special education services. And now with the federal funding freeze on all title programs, our local school districts are locked out of 10% of their operating budgets immediately. And this includes special education reimbursement. The skipping down, kind of the notion of eligibility does not equal access. School choice is not a parent choice. Public schools are allowed to use restrictive admissions requirements and are allowed to dismiss students at any time without due process. We've heard such testimony in this committee dating back to 2021 from one of the diocese superintendents explaining how students with poor performance are, I quote, transitioned out and sent back to public schools. We also know that our Kansas tax credit scholarship program has left up to $6 million each year on unspent scholarship funds, left those dollars on the table when we have 230,000 eligible Kansas youth who live below the 185% poverty level. This equates to about 625 unfilled slots in that program annually on average. The voucher program, the evidence continues to accumulate across the country. These programs do not result in better test scores for
Ms. Sinclair,
Yep.
I'm so sorry your time has expired, but thank you for providing testimony today.
Appreciate it.
Committee, we have about 4 minutes, so I will allow, just for fairness, if we have one question for proponents and one question for opponent, quickly. And then I will make the offer that if committee members have questions of specific conferees, please send them to us and we will do our best to get a response, but I wish we had unlimited time, but we don't. So do we have any question for the proponents? Senator Sykes.
And thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Dr. Gill. When did you have notice that we were having a hearing on this bill?
Dr. Gill, if you could please come to the microphone and introduce yourself and your response.
We got official notice that there was hearing on this bill on Friday.
Okay, but you have been advertising and promoting on social media that there would be a hearing, I think, for 14 days.
We were told that there was supposed to be and possibly could be.
Okay.
So we understand that you guys have to mix it up sometimes. So that was our heart and our hope and what we prepared for.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, do we have a question for the opponents committee? Any questions? Senator Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question is for Leah Fleiter. You presented testimony that you think public schools are doing great today. And yesterday, this committee was briefed on Blueprint for Literacy. We were informed that 32% of Kansas kids are scoring level 1 on reading, struggling to read. How do you reconcile those two things?
There are a number of reasons why kids struggle to read, so I appreciate that question, and the Literacy Blueprint is doing a great job of trying to address that. I think the big issue is going to be making sure those pre-service teachers are getting the training that they need to be able to teach kids to read at the level that they need to read. I will say there are a number of reasons why kids struggle to read. I think the two struggle to read at the level that they need to. I think I would probably defer to the two retired superintendents on the committee to talk more about what those factors might be. A lot of times it is things at home or in the society that do impact a kid's ability to read. So yes, we've got about 32% of kids who need to read better, but then we have kids at level 2, 3, and 4 who are succeeding at the level that they need to be. So we are completely committed to moving that needle. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for being here, for the respectful hearing, for adhering to the time frame. I know we have a lot more questions. There will be a lot more discussion, but committee, I want to remind you, tomorrow is our Teacher of the Year. We will be meeting in the old Supreme Court room at our normal time, so look forward to that. And with that, seeing no other business, we are adjourned.